How do you hide a weapon that can kill the enemy's best tank? In July 1944, Normandy, a British Sherman crew, had a problem. Their tank carried the only gun that could destroy German Tigers frontally, the 17-pounder cannon. But German tank commanders had learned to identify and kill Sherman Fireflies first. So Sergeant Joe Eakins and his crew did something brilliant. They made their deadly Sherman look ordinary, camouflaged the long barrel, removed identifying markings, positioned themselves among regular 75mm Shermans. The Germans saw what they expected, just another weak Sherman to be ignored, while they hunted for the dangerous Firefly. Then a Tiger appeared on a ridgeline 1,000 yards away. The German commander felt safe. No regular Sherman could threaten him at that range. Joe Eakins centered his sight on the Tiger's frontal armor, loaded a 17-pounder armor-piercing round traveling at 3,000 feet per second, and fired. The Tiger exploded. Its commander, SS Hauptsturmführer Michael Wittmann, the greatest tank ace in German history with 138 kills, died instantly, never knowing what hit him. If you want to know how one modified Sherman changed tank warfare forever, subscribe now. This is the story of the Firefly. By June 1944, the Sherman tank had a reputation problem. American and British crews called it a death trap because its 75mm gun couldn't penetrate German Tiger or Panther frontal armor. Tank-on-tank combat was suicide. Shermans had to maneuver for side shots while Tigers killed them at 2,000 yards from any angle. The math was brutal. In Normandy's first month, Allied forces lost 4 Shermans for every German tank destroyed. Crews didn't expect to survive their first engagement with heavy German armor. British tank commanders demanded a solution. The Americans were developing the 76mm gun and HVAP ammunition, but the British had something better, the 17-pounder anti-tank gun, a monster that fired 76.2mm armor-piercing rounds at 3,000 feet per second. It could penetrate 140 mm of armor at 1,000 yards. Tiger frontal armor was 100mm. Panther was 80mm. The problem, the 17-pounder was a towed artillery piece, too large to mount in a Sherman turret, or so everyone thought. British engineers said it was impossible. The gun was too long, too heavy, the recoil too violent. Mounting it in a Sherman would require complete turret redesign, months of engineering, expensive modifications. Then Major George Bridie of the Royal Armored Corps said, "Make it work anyway. Our crews are dying. I don't care if it's ugly or uncomfortable. I need a Sherman that can kill Tigers." British engineers performed mechanical surgery. They rotated the 17-pounder's massive breech 90 degrees, removed the assistant gunner position to make room, reinforced the turret mounting, added a counterweight to the rear of the turret to balance the gun's weight, and welded armor plates wherever they could fit them. The result was awkward, cramped, and uncomfortable. The gun's recoil was so violent it could crack bones if crew members weren't braced properly. The long barrel made the tank nose-heavy and difficult to maneuver. There was barely room for 3 men in a turret designed for 4, but it worked. The Sherman Firefly, as it was designated, could kill any German tank from the front at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards. Production began in January 1944. By D-Day, British and Canadian armored units had received approximately 300 Fireflies. The plan, 1 Firefly per troop of 4 Shermans, 3 decoy tanks with 75mm guns, 1 killer with the 17-pounder. German intelligence quickly learned to fear the distinctive long-barreled Sherman. Orders went out to all panzer units. Identify and destroy Fireflies first. They are the primary threat, which meant Firefly crews needed to hide what they were. And that meant camouflage, deception, and making the deadliest Sherman look ordinary. Sergeant Joe Eakins was a 23-year-old tank gunner from Rushden, England, quiet, methodical, the kind of soldier who cleaned his gun obsessively and memorized ballistics tables. In July 1944, he was assigned as gunner to a Sherman Firefly in the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry, 33rd Armored Brigade. His commander, Sergeant Gordon, briefed the crew on their problem. "Germans know Fireflies are deadly. They've been ordered to kill us first. Every Tiger and Panther commander scans for our long barrel. We're priority targets, so what do we do?" Joe asked. "We become invisible. British Firefly crews developed camouflage techniques specifically to hide their distinctive 17-pounder. Technique 1. Barrel disguise. They wrapped canvas around the gun barrel's muzzle brake, making it appear shorter. Painted false muzzle markings halfway down the barrel to create the illusion of a standard 75mm gun. From a distance, the Firefly looked like a regular Sherman. Technique 2. False markings. Standard Shermans had turret numbers painted prominently. Fireflies painted their numbers small or omitted them entirely, making identification harder. Technique 3. Positioning. Fireflies positioned themselves among regular 75mm Shermans, never in the lead position. German commanders would see 4 Shermans and assume all were 75mm, weak, ignorable threats while they hunted for Fireflies. Technique 4. Silence. Firefly crews never fired first. They let regular Shermans engage, drawing German attention. Only when a Tiger or Panther revealed itself, focused on the weak 75mm Shermans, would the Firefly fire. One-shot kill, then relocate before return fire. Joe practiced these tactics obsessively. His crew, driver, radio operator, loader, and commander, trained until they could fire, reload, and reposition in under 20 seconds. They knew the statistics. German crews were better trained, had superior armor and guns. The only advantage Allied tankers had was numbers. And Fireflies. If the Germans identified and killed Fireflies early, the numerical advantage collapsed. On August 8, 1944, Joe's Firefly was positioned in Normandy near Sintho, supporting British advances toward Falaise. Intelligence reported German armor in the area, including Tiger tanks from the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, the same unit commanded by SS Hauptsturmführer Michael Wittmann, the most successful tank commander in history. 38 confirmed kills, a legend who destroyed entire British columns single-handedly. The man every Allied tanker feared. Joe's commander received the radio message. Enemy armor approaching. Tigers confirmed. All units prepare for engagement. Joe loaded a 17-pounder armor-piercing round and waited, hidden among 3 regular Shermans, looking ordinary, looking weak, waiting for the Tiger that would change everything. August 8, 1944, 12:47 hours. 3 Tigers appeared on a ridgeline near Sintho, advancing toward British positions. Michael Wittmann's command Tiger led, flanked by 2 wingmen, a standard German heavy tank formation, designed to maximize firepower and minimize vulnerability. From 1,000 yards away, Joe Eakins watched through his gun sight. The Tigers were moving cautiously, scanning for threats. Their 88mm guns could destroy any Sherman at this range, but they were looking for Fireflies, long-barreled threats. Joe's Sherman looked ordinary. Short barrel, camouflaged. No distinctive markings. Positioned among 3 regular 75mm Shermans that the Tigers would dismiss as minimal threats. The lead Tiger, Wittmann's command vehicle, number 007, stopped on the ridgeline. Perfect position. Hull down, only turret exposed, scanning the battlefield through binoculars. Range 1,000 yards, Joe's commander whispered. Angle 15 degrees left. Target, lead Tiger. Joe centered his sight on the Tiger's turret front. At 1,000 yards, hitting a stationary target was feasible. Hitting a moving one required prediction, calculation, experience. But this Tiger wasn't moving. Wittmann felt safe at this range. No regular Sherman could threaten him from 1,000 yards. He was scanning for Fireflies, the real danger. He never saw Joe's Firefly. Looked like just another weak Sherman. Fire when ready, the commander said. Joe's finger touched the trigger. All the training, all the practice, all the ballistics tables memorized. Condensed into one moment he fired. The 17-pounder roared. The massive recoil rocked the entire Sherman backward. The armor-piercing round, traveling at 3,000 feet per second, crossed 1,000 yards in 1.2 seconds. It struck Wittmann's Tiger directly on the turret front. The round penetrated the 100mm armor, entered the crew compartment traveling at supersonic velocity, and detonated the ammunition storage. The Tiger exploded. Not a small fire, a catastrophic detonation that blew the turret completely off the hull. Fire, smoke, debris raining down across the ridgeline. Michael Wittmann, 138 kills, Knights crossed with oak leaves and swords. The most feared tank commander in the German army died instantly. He never knew what killed him. The two remaining Tigers immediately reversed, retreating behind the ridgeline. They just watched their legendary commander destroyed by an enemy they hadn't even identified. Joe's loader slammed another round into the breach. "Target destroyed, reloading." "Relocate," the commander ordered. Now, before they figure out where that came from, the Firefly reversed into cover. One shot, one kill. The most important tank kill of the Normandy campaign. And the Germans still didn't know which Sherman had done it. Michael Wittmann's death rippled through German armored forces like a shockwave. He wasn't just a tank commander, he was a propaganda symbol. The unstoppable ace, the man who'd single-handedly destroyed entire British columns at Villers-Bocage, the living proof of German armored superiority. And he'd been killed by a Sherman. German tank crews couldn't comprehend it. A Sherman at 1,000 yards? Impossible. German 75 mm guns couldn't penetrate Tiger armor beyond 500 yards. There was no way, unless it was a Firefly. But German observers at Sinthos swore they'd seen no Firefly. No long barrel, no distinctive silhouette, just regular Shermans. Somehow one of those regular Shermans had killed Wittmann. The psychological effect was devastating. German tank commanders could no longer trust their ability to identify threats. That ordinary-looking Sherman might be a Firefly in disguise. That weak 75 mm gun might actually be a 17-pounder camouflaged to look harmless. Paranoia spread through panzer units. Orders changed. Treat all Shermans as potential Fireflies. Engage from maximum range. Never assume a Sherman is harmless based on appearance, which meant German armor lost its aggressive edge. Tigers and Panthers that had previously advanced confidently now approached British positions cautiously, wary of hidden Fireflies. British tank commanders noticed the change immediately. German armor was hesitating, maintaining distance, refusing to close. The psychological advantage had shifted. Firefly crews exploited this ruthlessly. They camouflaged more aggressively, hid among regular Shermans more carefully. Let German commanders see what they expected, weak 75 mm Shermans, then killed them from ranges the Germans thought were safe. Joe Ekins and his crew destroyed 2 more Tigers over the next week, both kills at ranges exceeding 800 yards. Both times, the German crews never identified which Sherman had fired. By late August 1944, German after-action reports were filled with references to unidentified high-velocity anti-tank weapons and Shermans with unknown gun modifications. Some German commanders believed the British had developed a secret new tank. Others thought they were facing disguised tank destroyers. The truth was simpler. One modified. Sherman with a long gun and crews trained to hide in plain sight. But the effect was disproportionate to the numbers. British forces had maybe 600 Fireflies total by August 1944, a tiny fraction of their armor. But those 600 tanks created so much fear and uncertainty that German armored doctrine fundamentally changed. Tigers and Panthers designed to dominate battlefields through superior armor, and firepower became cautious, defensive, hesitant, because one Sherman had killed their greatest ace, and they couldn't tell which Shermans were deadly and which were weak. That uncertainty was more powerful than armor. By September 1944, captured German tank commanders were being interrogated by British intelligence officers. The questions were always the same. What weapons do you fear most? The answers changed. In June, German crews had said, artillery, air attacks. Nothing else threatens us. By September, the Firefly, the 17-pounder Sherman. The gun kills Tigers from any angle. One captured Panther commander explained, "We can defeat American 76mm Shermans. We can defeat Soviet T-34s, but the Firefly, if you see the long barrel, you're already dead. If you don't see it, you die anyway. There's no defense except distance and prayer." British intelligence analyzed German radio intercepts and found a disturbing pattern. German tank commanders were abandoning tactically important positions because scouts reported possible Fireflies in the area. Not confirmed Fireflies, just possible ones. The fear had become paralyzing. German training manuals were updated with a new section, identifying and engaging the Sherman Firefly. The manual included silhouette drawings, showing the distinctive long barrel, the repositioned turret counterweight, the muzzle brake profile. But British Firefly crews had already adapted. They studied the German identification manuals, captured from destroyed tanks, and developed counter-camouflage specifically to defeat German recognition techniques. The result? A cat-and-mouse game where German crews tried to identify Fireflies before engagement, while British crews tried to hide their identity until the perfect killing shot. Joe Ekins became one of the most successful Firefly gunners in Normandy. 5 confirmed Tiger kills, 3 Panthers, 12 Panzerfäuse, all from ranges exceeding 600 yards, all while remaining undetected until firing. His technique was simple: patience. Other gunners got excited when they saw German armor, Joe explained after the war. They'd fire immediately. I waited. Let the Germans focus on other targets. Let them think they'd identified all the threats. Then I'd fire when they weren't looking. One shot, kill. Relocate before they figured out where it came from. But the price was high. Firefly crews had the highest casualty rate in British armored units, because when Germans did identify them, they concentrated all fire on the Firefly first. Joe survived. Many didn't. Of the approximately 2,000 Fireflies produced during the war, hundreds were destroyed in combat. The average operational life of a Firefly in frontline service was 37 days. But those 37 days changed tank warfare forever, because the Firefly proved that technological superiority could be overcome through innovation, adaptation, and psychological warfare. The Germans had better tanks, but the British had one gun that made German tankers afraid. The war in Europe ended May 8, 1945. Joe Ekins returned to England having survived 11 months of continuous combat, a near miracle for a Firefly gunner. His crew had destroyed 12 German tanks confirmed, possibly more unconfirmed. But Joe never spoke about killing Michael Wittmann. For decades, the British Army credited Wittmann's death to a Canadian Firefly crew, a British anti-tank gun, even to Allied aircraft. Joe's kill wasn't officially confirmed until 2003, 59 years later, when military historians cross-referenced battlefield positions, German records, and British after-action reports. The evidence was conclusive. Joe Ekins, gunner of Sherman Firefly Veliki Luki, had fired the shot that killed history's greatest tank ace. At 1,000 yards, through frontal armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. When historians finally contacted Joe in 2003, he was 82 years old, living quietly in Northamptonshire. His reaction to confirmation: I was just doing my job. Wittmann was a target. I took the shot. That's all there was to it. But it wasn't just a shot. It was the moment that proved German armored superiority was an illusion. That frontal armor meant nothing against the right gun. That innovation could overcome engineering advantage. The Sherman Firefly's legacy extends far beyond Joe Ekins's kill. By war's end, approximately 2,100 Fireflies had been produced. They served in Northwest Europe, Italy, and the Pacific. They destroyed hundreds of German tanks. Exact numbers are disputed, but conservative estimates exceed 500 confirmed kills. More importantly, they changed German tank doctrine fundamentally. Before the Firefly, German armor operated on the principle of invulnerability. Tiger and Panther frontal armor couldn't be penetrated by Allied guns. Therefore, German tanks could advance aggressively, dictate engagement ranges, and dominate battlefields. The Firefly shattered that principle. Suddenly, frontal armor wasn't protection. It was a false sense of security. German tanks that had advanced confidently now hesitated, sought cover, maintained distance. The psychological shift was as important as the mechanical one. Allied tank crews who'd felt helpless against Tigers and Panthers suddenly had a weapon that could fight back. That confidence transformed battlefield behavior. Crews advanced more aggressively, accepted engagements they'd previously avoided, fought with the belief they could win. German crews experienced the opposite. Confidence became fear. Invulnerability became vulnerability. Every Sherman became a potential Firefly. Every engagement a potential death trap. One modified tank had rewritten the psychology of armored warfare. After the war, military analysts studied the Firefly's impact. Their conclusions were surprising. The Firefly's greatest contribution wasn't the tanks it destroyed, it was the tanks it prevented from being aggressive. A U.S. Army analysis from 1948 estimated the Sherman Firefly directly destroyed approximately 500–600 German tanks, but by forcing German armor to adopt defensive, cautious tactics, the Firefly indirectly prevented an estimated 2,000–3,000 Allied tank losses that would have occurred had German armor maintained pre-Firefly tactical doctrine. In other words, one gun, mounted in a mediocre tank, changed how an entire army fought. And that change saved thousands of Allied lives. The American military learned this lesson when they developed the M26 Pershing heavy tank with a 90mm gun. They specifically studied the Firefly's psychological impact. The goal wasn't just to build a gun that could kill German tanks. It was to build a gun that made German tankers afraid. Soviet tank designers learned the same lesson. Post-war Soviet heavy tanks prioritized gun penetration over armor thickness, understanding that psychological dominance came from the ability to threaten enemy armor, not from being impenetrable. Modern tank doctrine traces directly to lessons learned from the Firefly. Firepower creates psychological advantage as much as armor. Innovation can overcome technological inferiority, and perception shapes battlefield behavior as powerfully as reality. Joe Eakins lived quietly until his death in 2012 at age 91. He worked as a road construction laborer, raised a family, never sought recognition for his wartime service. When the British Army finally confirmed his kill of Michael Whitman in 2003, newspapers wanted interviews. Military historians wanted his story. Joe gave one brief interview to the BBC and then refused all others. His quote from that interview summarized his entire philosophy. "I wasn't a hero. I was a gunner who did what he was trained to do. The real heroes are the men who didn't come home. Whitman was a target. I took the shot. The war went on, that's all." But at Joe's funeral in 2012, something remarkable happened. Veterans from across Europe attended, British, Canadian, even two former German tank commanders who'd fought against Fireflies in Normandy. One of them, Hans Becker, age 94, former Panther commander, gave an unexpected eulogy. "I never met Sergeant Ekins during the war, but I knew his weapon. Every German tanker knew the Firefly. We feared it more than any other Allied weapon, not because it was the deadliest, artillery killed more of us, but because it meant we weren't invincible anymore. For 2 years, we believed our Tigers and Panthers made us untouchable. That belief died when the Fireflies appeared. Suddenly, we could be killed from the front, at ranges we thought was safe, by tanks we thought were weak. Sergeant Ekins and men like him taught us that technology doesn't guarantee victory. Skill, tactics, and innovation matter more than armor thickness. That lesson cost many of my comrades their lives, but it was a lesson that needed teaching. War is terrible, but if it must be fought, better it's won by men who think creatively than by men who rely on superior technology. Sergeant Eakins was that kind of soldier. I salute him. Today, several Sherman Fireflies are preserved in museums worldwide. The most famous, the Tank Museum in Bovington, England, displays a Firefly with a plaque explaining its significance. Sherman Firefly, the only Allied tank capable of destroying German Tigers and Panthers frontally. Approximately 2,100 produced, changed armored warfare doctrine by proving that innovation defeats technological superiority. But the plaque doesn't mention the camouflage techniques, the psychological warfare, the crews who hid in plain sight and killed from ranges the enemy thought were safe. It doesn't mention Joe Ekins, who killed the greatest tank ace in history and then went home to build roads. It doesn't explain that the Firefly's real weapon wasn't the 17-pounder gun. It was the fear that gun created in German tank commanders who could no longer trust their armor. Here's the truth about the Sherman Firefly. It wasn't the best tank of World War II. It was cramped, uncomfortable, mechanically crude, and dangerous to crew. But it had one gun that changed everything. And that one gun proved that wars aren't won by whoever has the best equipment. They're won by whoever uses their equipment most effectively. The Germans had better tanks, better armor, better engineering. The British had one modified Sherman with a long gun, and that Sherman erased German armored superiority in one 1,000-yard shot. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. Drop a comment about a time-smart modification beat superior technology. Share this so Joe Ekins and the Firefly crews are never forgotten. So the tankers who hid in plain sight and killed Germany's best are remembered. They ignored one Sherman. It had a longer barrel than the others. That barrel fired once. Michael Whitman, 138 kills, untouchable legend, died instantly. And suddenly, every German tank commander understood. Frontal armor meant nothing against the right gun. The Firefly proved that innovation beats superiority. That creativity beats resources. That one well-designed weapon changes wars more than 1,000 mediocre ones. Remember, the best tank isn't always the heaviest or most expensive. Sometimes it's the one nobody sees coming. The one that looks ordinary but hits like thunder. The one German tankers learned to fear more than any other. The Sherman Firefly. Ugly, cramped, uncomfortable, and absolutely deadly. The tank that taught the Germans that armor means nothing when the enemy has the right gun.